Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalren. I think it's time to sit down and talk about GCD and BFA. I feel like the topic of GCD and BFA, I don't know where it went. I see some people still complaining about GCD, others people are saying not that much about GCD. You don't really hear anybody saying, oh my god, thank god the GCD is there. You either have people that are saying it sucks or people that are just quiet because it doesn't bother them. So it's really hard to gauge where exactly the GCD topic is at. In this video, I kind of just want to sit down and talk about GCD, give you guys a few examples, and give you my thoughts on the GCD and BFA. So how did the GCD sneak its way into BFA, and why do we have all the GCD changes with a lot of our abilities? There's a lot of reasons for this. Some reasons PvP, some reasons PvE, some are even class-based. But the main reason is because developers said it'll be better for the long term of the game. I personally have no idea what that means. I can't even imagine World of Warcraft past BFA, mostly because of a few reasons. One, this game is kind of an older game. BFA is looking like a great expansion, but I just can't even imagine what else is there to come because we still don't even have BFA. We don't even see what the story is like. I can't even imagine where it could go, and I can't even imagine how much different it could be in the future. But the developer said it's going to be good for the long term. I cannot answer whether it'll be good for long term or not. What we can answer though is if it will be good now in BFA, if it will be a fun mechanic at all, or if it's enough to break a lot of people's experiences in BFA. Off the bat, the first impression that a lot of people are gonna get, and this is, I can just tell you right now, the first day of playing in BFA type of GCD type of gameplay, pre-patch, live game, whatever, going from Legion into BFA, you're gonna feel yourself downclocking a little bit. It's gonna feel slower. It's not like they actually slow down the pace of the game, but with everything being on GCD, also with some of the class changes, it feels like it slows down, and it's not something you're quite used to. And I feel that a lot of people will have trouble, or maybe for first week, trying to go from going basically 1,000,000 miles an hour, which is pretty basic average speed for us in Legion, down to BFA. A lot of people are definitely going to feel a slowdown. But how does it feel after getting used to it? Because the first maybe week, at least that's what it took me, to get used to how my spec plays with class changes, GCD and whatnot. How does it feel after getting used to it? And that's one thing I do want to discuss here. How is it going to feel after you get used to the GCD changes? Is it actually better? Is it worse? What's positive? What's negative? And how does it affect a lot of the classes? In this video, I have you guys a few examples of a poster child Fury Warrior, which is a class that's all about stacking as many cooldowns as possible at the same time, and how that class is affected in BFA. That's one of the biggest things that everybody were afraid of. How will classes that stack a lot of cooldowns fare? Fury Warrior probably being the best example. And then just some of the average differences between majority of the classes. I wanted to bring in casters, melee, and every variety of classes for this video, but casters are not nearly as affected. As a caster, you don't really feel the GCD nearly as much. Maybe pressing your big button might feel weird if it's an instacast, but past that, you have a lot of abilities to kind of bypass it, from instacast procs to maybe your major cooldowns being an ability you cast, so then you kind of chain cast into a cast. I decided to showcase Beastmaster Hunter, mostly because I've been having a lot of fun with hunters, but it's a class where you spend and build your resource, and you got to spend it and build it and make sure you don't run out of it, but also make sure you don't overcap on it. Those classes are going to be probably the most affected, depending on the spec. The most affected with the GCD changes, as the GCD changes add a little bit extra in terms of your resource play. So, to bring you guys these examples, let's start off with the Beastmaster Hunter. For Beastmaster Hunters, we have a small few things. For example, your GCD, and CDs being on GCD means a little bit more play with your resources. Normally on Legion, you can just pop cooldowns together at the same time if you want to macro them together, and then you can just kind of go off doing damage. It doesn't really matter when you press your CDs, except you just want to make sure you have most of your burst available and maybe the most amount of resources. You pop it, and then here you go into burst. Now with GCD play, you have to spend every single GCD being as efficient as possible, whether it's with your resources like focus or energy, with your runes, mana, maybe some kind of charges, proc mechanics. And as a Beastmaster Hunter, I find myself using my big CDs with my GCD, playing around with resources. When you spend a GCD popping an offensive cooldown, now it's also a moment for you to not be spending your resource. So for Beastmaster Hunters, I find myself using Bestial Wrath, for example, which is an ability that buffs you on your pet's damage, almost like as a sense of just the GCD where I don't spend energy, I don't spend my resource. Usually most of my abilities spend resource or build it, so an ability that's a cooldown because it's on GCD, it almost counts as if it's like a way for me to regen my resource, because it's a global that I spend particularly not spending that resource. I know it makes no sense, but when it comes to the actual gameplay and you're all about trying to maximize the rotation, the order at which your abilities are fired in, it makes you think a little bit more about when you want to slot in your big offensive cooldown. Do you want to slot it in early when you don't need to regenerate resource, or do you want to kind of spend a little bit of your resource, then slot it in so you gain resource back? Now you're being a little bit more efficient, and I feel like a lot of other classes are gonna hit with that as well. So what you get out of it is spending and building resources like energy, focus, or really any resource that you end up spending and building on a class feels a little bit more interesting in your day-to-day simple mob killing. Just going around and trying to fight a mob and being efficient in your damage is something you can practice and do while out in the questing world. Normally you just want to make sure you're timing rotation and spamming your abilities as fast as possible, and you have a base order of how you want to use it. You want to combine cooldowns together. Now you're going to have to learn when's a good time to slot in your abilities if you are playing to the GCD. And if you're somebody who can have something to press every single global, it adds a little bit extra, I guess, of the difficulty and experience with that class. I feel like it gives a little bit more thought in terms of how you want to pace your abilities. You can't just pop your cooldowns anytime you want to. You now have to find a more suitable or a most optimized position when to use it. And it happens on such small bases, but I feel like it makes for more engaging gameplay in the long run. When you play the rotation, it feels, when you're pressing your keys, it feels a little bit cleaner. It doesn't feel on Legion where I'm just trying to press two abilities at the same time, or just spam them in a single macro, just trying to get my opener going, and then I'm just all about hitting abilities as soon as they come off cooldown, almost like I'm playing whack-a-mole. It feels that I have an order and I can have a little bit more control in terms of my rotation. On top of it, a lot of classes in BFA, I think majority of the ones that needed it, got enough changes to play around the GCD. Some classes are losing their artifact weapons and they're fine playing in the GCD type of environment. Others had to have specific changes in order to help supplement towards that environment. So a lot of classes that are in Legion slap GCD won't feel that great, but slap GCD on them and then make the changes that are happening to them in BFA start to feel great all of a sudden. A class like Fury Warrior is, again, poster child that is the most affected by the GCD changes. The way you play it in Legion, you charge the enemy, pop all of your cooldowns, and go ham. That's part of the Fury playstyle. It's actually a fun playstyle. It's pretty fast paced. And if you're accurate with the rotation, you watch enough for your resource management, and you get a little bit lucky with a few crits depending on your legendaries, you could really have an explosive damage combo. And if you can keep that ball rolling up until execute phase, that's where the fun really begins. It's a great specialization, and I've enjoyed it a lot in Legion. In BFA, however, having all your abilities that you pop in the opener all on separate GCDs feels terrible. But if you play the specialization and take a look at the damage numbers, you will see where the damage really comes from. Majority of damage for Fury Warriors, as per change in BFA, comes from your auto attacks. So you having to pop your cooldown separately doesn't affect the main component that is your damage, your auto attacks. And I feel like in some cases it offers more options now for you to take a look at other talents that might maybe help your auto attack damage. So now the specialization, no matter if you can get those globals off or on, as long as you're right clicking the enemy and your auto attacks are going off, you're still doing majority of your damage. So then the whole GCD thing doesn't affect the specialization nearly as much, as the main damage source is different. And a lot of classes got some of these changes. Majority of them are strength classes. Majority of them have their auto attacks doing extra damage compared to some of their other abilities to offset the playstyle of generally a slower class like most of the strength classes are. In PvP, I didn't notice the GCD thing at all. I didn't feel like abilities are locking me out, or I didn't feel like GCD is helping me in any sense. It does feel a little bit different that you need to first stun the enemy, then pop cooldowns, and now you only have, out of that 5-second stun, first GCD, spend stunning them. Second GCD, popping cooldowns, you have 3 global cooldowns or 3 seconds of a stun left in order to dish out any kinds of damage. But it's kind of good for PvP because in PvP we don't really need cooldowns in order to kill now. It feels like in a single stun you can really get some damage even if you don't have all of your cooldowns available. And even if you do, it feels like they do just overall more damage. So for PvP, the whole GCD thing, I didn't notice it help, but also didn't notice it hurt it whatsoever. After playing BFA for a while, I would even say the GCD at one point started feeling almost comfortable. And there was a moment of, I guess, like a switch in my brain where I'm playing this And I thought to myself, why isn't the game like this? Why isn't there a little bit of GCD? I'm not sure if it was just me getting used to it, or me actually enjoying the cooldowns, or me just going to insanity thinking that this is going to be our future. I might as well accept it as it is, and I just lost my freaking mind. It could be any one of those three things, but I did have a moment where I thought, why isn't the game like this? Why isn't it this way, isn't how it is in BFA? Why are we playing the current Legion system when the BFA one starts to make sense? It's not something I can really expect logically. It was just a thought that popped in my head, and I kind of just ran with it for a moment until I started doing some more quests, and then my mind drifted elsewhere. I feel like there's a big difference between reading about the GCD changes, reading what other people say about GCD changes, watching videos of GCD changes, as well as playing it. Because I will still go by what I said before, BFA does feel like a little bit different of a game than Legion. It's almost like trying to compare Legion with vanilla. You won't say they're the same game. Yes, they have World of Warcraft in title, but there's so many subtle little differences that they just don't feel quite the same. And I feel like going from Legion to BFA, there's enough of those differences where I won't really call them almost like the same game. At least that's been my experience with BFA so far. And I feel like with the changes that happen in BFA, the GCD change fits it pretty well. It's like a good pair of pants, not too snug, but not too loose, just right. Lastly, I feel like pre-patch is going to be the best time for us to test the GCD changes. It's either going to be pre-patch on PTR that we'll be able to test a lot of the changes, or once the pre-patch actually hits the servers. What I recommend for a lot of people, if you play a specialization kind of like I do, where you have an exclusive specialization that you play, give it a week. Play that specialization in pre-patch for a week to see if you are satisfied or dissatisfied with the changes. If you're satisfied and you get used to it and you still want to play the specialization, then you should be just fine. But if you're playing it with all the class changes and the GCD changes and you're just not feeling that specialization, not feeling that class altogether, I think it's also a good time to start looking at other classes. But definitely, if you're somebody who is, I guess, as hardcore as I've been about primarily playing Outlaw, if you have that one specialization that you just like, you want to main it, you've been maining it for Legion, definitely spend a considerable time. I would say at least maybe like a week worth of time, maybe less, maybe more, because classes are getting class changes. The GCD change is going to affect on your class and spec differently depending on which class and spec there is. And it really comes down to subjective differences. I found the GCD thing to be kind of convenient, kind of comfortable, and I actually kind of like it. And in some cases, I even prefer it. But you guys might not, but maybe it just takes the right class or right specialization, or it just simply might not be for you. You won't really know until you really try it. But when I say try it, don't just give it like, 5 minutes and decide, oh, this is stupid and you're done. Give it like a day. Give it like 2 days. You really need downclocking yourself to like a slower playstyle is a lot harder than trying to speed yourself up to a faster playstyle. And a lot of people I feel like will experience the downclocking once you get into either beta or pre-patch. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about the GCD. In the end, I feel like GCD kind of is okay in BFA. I don't think it really ruins the game, and I'm definitely going to play it. I actually kind of, in some cases, even like the playstyle with the GCD changes. I might be crazy, but I actually kind of like it. I think I prefer it, and or maybe I'm just simply used to it, and I just cannot get used to the Legion playstyle ever again. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the description below. What do you think about the GCD changes in BFA? Whether you got to experience it, whether you haven't got to experience it, and all that good jazz. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a like. Comments are always appreciated. Subscribe if you want to. Hit the notification bell if you do. Thank you all, and I'll see all of you in another video.